Hi, I'm Judy, and this is my friend Andy. Recently, Andy showed me some pictures of moths that he had taken, and I was so impressed, I had to come out and see what he was doing. He told me a little bit about the project he was working on. I came out, took some pictures with him, and I had so much fun, I decided that it would be nice to share it with others. So I asked him if it would be okay to do this video, and he agreed. So Andy, tell us a little bit about how you got interested in doing this, when, and a little bit about your project.
So there's actually a couple of different seeds that kind of came together to get me interested in the moths. I was originally doing some flower photography and encountered a thing called the blanket flower moth. I was photographing blanket flowers. And this moth has a yellow head that matches the yellow on the flower and a maroon body that matches the maroon on the flower. And it orients itself on the flower so that its colors match up with the flower's colors. And that was like, a moth can do that. And so that was kind of like the first seed. And then there was a bunch of other seeds. And I think probably one of the last ones was just walking in the house one night with the porch light had been left on. And I could not believe the diversity of moths out there, the different shapes and colors. Yes, even colors. You don't normally notice the colors in a moth because we usually see them in dim light, it's night, and they're small. But if you lean in and just look closer, they are amazing, which we'll see a little bit later. So the way that I attract the moths is the same way that professionals do, and it's pretty simple, really. One way is to take a sheet and drape it over your car or suspend it between some poles or on a rope between trees, and then shine an ultraviolet light on it, or a mercury vapor light, or something that has ultraviolet light in it. And the moths will come and then they'll land on it, and then it's real easy to take their picture. After they've landed, usually after a couple of minutes, they essentially go to sleep. And they're not at all bothered by you walking right up and taking a picture of them. Another technique that I use and that professionals use is called a moth trap. A moth trap is a large container like a 5-gallon bucket that has a lid on it and then a little funnel, and then on top of the funnel is ultraviolet light or a mercury vapor light. And the moths are attracted to that light, but rather than beating themselves up against the light, what they do is they drop down into the bucket. And inside the bucket is a bunch of egg cartons that the moths like, and they just crawl around and then go to sleep. And you can leave that set up all night, and in the morning see what moths you have. I typically don't leave it up all night just because of the fire danger where we live, and I'll just leave it on for a few hours and then get the moths out. And you can photograph them on the egg cartons, or you can they're very docile at that point. You can gently lift them out and set them on some fabric or something, a rock or something, to get a really nice picture of them.
So Andy, could you tell us a little bit about how you actually take the photos in the field, what cameras you use, accessories, settings, that sort of thing?
All right. So I use just a regular mirrorless camera, and this one happens to be a Canon R5 Mark II, and 100 millimeter macro lens. There's a couple of unique things that I do. For one thing, you're getting really close to the moths, and if I use a regular lens hood, the problem is that it will shadow the moth. And so I've constructed on here my own makeshift lens hood that's very short. It's just a bunch of step-up rings all stuck together. These aren't very expensive. And then I just put that on the lens, and it gives me enough of a lens hood to keep the light from the diffuser falling on the lens. Then for a diffuser, I'm using something called the LimiQuest Softbox 3. There are a number of other softboxes that work really well that are specifically designed more for insect photography, and they kind of branch out a little bit more, and they're kind of shaped like this. There's a whole bunch of brands, and they work really well as well. Then it's just a normal flash, but there's a couple of tricks here. One thing is the flash is set to 1/16 power, and the way a flash works is the lower the power, the shorter the pulse of light. In this case, with this particular flash, that makes an 8,000th of a second flash, and the moths don't see it. The moths are sensitive to movement of light, but they are not sensitive to really quick changes in light. And they can be sitting there on the sheet, and you can just take pictures all day long, and they'll completely ignore you. The settings in terms of that is you have a shutter sync speed of 1/160th of a second when you're using electronic shutter in this camera. Use f11, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. f16 would give you a little more depth of field, but f11 gives you a little bit sharper. One of the problems with f11, though, is that you have to get your plane of focus really lined up close with that moth, or a lot of it's going to be out of focus. So that's pretty much the camera. One other trick is to help the camera focus in the dark. At night, even with the mercury vapor light or the black light, it's usually not enough for the camera to focus quickly and accurately. And especially if the light's behind you and you're standing between the light and the moth, you're shadowing the moth, and the camera has trouble focusing. So moths, because they don't see red light, I use a red flashlight in order to use a focus assist, and then I stick it inside my diffuser like this. And then, you probably can't see this on the camera. Well, you can. There's kind of a red glow that comes out of here that shines on the moth, and it really helps with the focus. Now, you might be asking, isn't that going to give the pictures a red cast? And the answer is no. And the reason is that the flash is so bright and so fast that, and with the short sync speed in the f11, the red light is not visible at all in the picture, nor is the mercury vapor light, which has not very good color properties. So basically 99% of all the light illuminating the bug comes from the flash itself, and it has a really good color properties, as you'll see later.
Andy, your property here in Redstone is beautiful. Could you tell us a little bit more about your property and where you like to take photos on it?
So our property is 47 acres in Redstone Canyon, which is located behind Horsetooth Mountain, for those of you in Fort Collins. We're at 6,200 feet elevation. And we've got a number of different environments up here. We've got some dry wash, some pine, a little bit of pine forest, and an intermittent creek with some willows. And why that matters is that moths come from caterpillars, and caterpillars are pretty specific about the types of shrubs, grasses, and trees that they grow on. And so by setting up the moth photography in different areas, will attract different moths in different areas. The other thing that I do is different moths come out at different times of year, which is another reason to have a whole summer project, is that you'll find different moths every few weeks. So what I've done is picked 3 spots that have different types of trees and shrubs around them, and a little bit different environment. One's more of a riparian, environment where a creek and stuff is, and one's more dry environment. And then I rotate between the 3 of those. The third one is our garage. Everybody's had trouble with moths in your garage, and I said, well, why not take advantage of that? So one of the places that I do set up, I'll open the garage door at night, I'll set up the sheet in the garage, and then shine the UV light on it, and I'll get just as many moths and just as much diversity as I get down by the creek or over in the wash north of the house.
Wow, that's a lot of good information, Andy. So it's starting to get dark outside. Shall we go see what moths have gathered at your various sites and do some photography?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, sounds good. So here we are at the setup down by the creek on Andy's property. Here's Andy.
Well, let's see, I'm surprised that we've already got moths because it's kind of breezy. You need several things to get the moths. It needs to be above 60 or 65 degrees. You need very little wind, and you don't want stray light. So street lights, full moon are distracting to the moth. If you're the only light around, they're going to fly to that. And that's what we have tonight. So the forecast was for wind, and it looks like we lucked out. It's not very breezy right now.
That's great.
So this is the moth trap, and I'm using it for dual purposes. The light is attracting moths into the trap, but it's also lighting up the sheet to attract moths to the sheet. The nice thing about the trap is the moths will circle around just once, they'll hit this and then drop right on down in without getting beat up. And they'll quickly find a safe spot in the egg cartons and then basically go to sleep. When you empty them though, what you want to do after you take your pictures is gently put the moths back in a bush or someplace away from where the birds will find them, because if you just leave the moths sitting out, the birds will come in and eat them all. So we've kind of got two light sources. We've got ultraviolet light over on the right, and then we've got the mercury vapor light from the moth trap on the left. One thing you can see right away is that the ultraviolet light is bringing in a whole lot of little tiny gnats and flies and things. We just got set up, and it usually takes about half an hour for the moths to kind of start showing up if the weather's calm. And here oh my gosh, yes, we got it. Okay. This is the best picture of the hind wings. So moths have four sets of wings, two forewings and two hind wings. And right here is a perfect example of that. This out here and this out here, whoops, are the forewing. And if the moth, normally those would be closed. This moth is flying, okay, or it's not flying, but it's flapping its wings very quickly. These beautiful things here are the hind wings.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And even though the moth is sitting there fluttering like that, the shutter, because I'm on 1/16th power, this flash puts out a 1/8000th of a second pulse.
Oh, wow.
And it freezes that motion. So if we were looking at that moth, I don't know if you saw this earlier, but it was just sitting there doing this.
But you caught it.
The flash completely freezes the action.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool.
In fact, if we go again, you can see what the moth is doing. So see, I was taking pictures there.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just hoping that one of them will be sharp and have the hind wings in full view, which this one does. If we zoom in, see they're pretty sharp.
Yeah. That looks pretty good.
So it's just another mountain mahogany, but it has a really pretty flap coming over the top there. Can you see that? I don't know if that's a hind wing or what that is. Okay, so there's our moth on the edge of the cloth. Okay, we're going to zoom in on the antenna.
Wow.
Look at that. And that's so that he can pick up the pheromones that the female gives off.
Wow, okay.
See that?
Huh.
So now we'll zoom back and you can see the whole moth.
Oh, yeah. They really are big compared.
This moth, normally all you see are these two outer white patches, but the wings, you can see the little bit of the hind wings exposed, and I'm going to zoom all the way in, and those inner white pieces are part of the hind wings.
Oh, wow.
I'll show you another feature here. As I zoom up towards the head, most moths have this kind of a hunchback here, and that's called the thoracic tuft. You know, insects have three parts. They have the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. And the thorax is, this little bulge in the middle, and it has all these scales on it, which are quite often interesting. They also poke up, so it makes focusing a challenge because they're closer to you than the rest of the moth. And this one has a particularly interesting thoracic tuft. I'm going to zoom on up to
Oh,
it.
yeah.
See, it has a pink color to it. Looks almost like some sort of a fur hat or something.
Yeah.
And that may in fact be something to keep the thorax warm. I don't. Take a look, and then I'm going to zoom in so you can see, and it is a he. You can see his antenna.
Oh,
Look at
yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow.
I'll turn this off, and the light needs to cool down before you move it. It's kind of fragile, which is why I'm looking forward to replacing it with an LED. You don't have to do that. So I'll just leave everything here, leave the light on, and just turn the light off, and it'll cool while I put away the UV light, the power supplies, and everything. And then I will open it up and knock it down, and then see what we got. Because these things are fragile, so I'm going to set them over here. And then I usually take these out one at a time. We've already got a ton of footage of him. Okay, and I've got a bunch of him. Let's see if he get him out. And nothing. So normally people leave these set up all night. So there's the antenna.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then I'll zoom out.
Yeah.
And you can see the full moth.
Yeah.
There.
Oh, yeah. Cool. So you got your new species for
That's
tonight. Huh?
right.
Great. Okay. Andy, how many species of moths have you photographed and identified so far? Talk about some of your favorites, what species, and what you particularly liked about that one.
All right. I'm about halfway through the summer, a little past halfway on the summer, and so far I've seen over 100 species. I haven't identified everything I've seen, so I could be quite a bit more than that, but I don't think I'm less than 100. In terms of I don't really have a favorite, but there's a lot of them that I thought were just really interesting, and so I can talk about a couple of those. This one here is called Groats Bertholdia, and the first picture I got of this was actually on the garage door. We were set up in the garage, and it landed on the open garage door. So the first picture I got of this was shooting straight up. This was a later picture. The interesting thing about this moth is that it sends out a sound at 4,000 clicks per second that jams bat sonar. And this effect has even been studied. And there was a short article on it on NPR several years ago. So that was an exciting find. And it's just beautiful colors. Let's see. Another interesting one is this one that I talked about earlier. This is the blanket flower moth. That it sits on a blanket flower, and then a lot of them, this is a little bit yellower than this particular blanket flower moth, but it orients this to be over the yellow part of the flower, and it orients this to be over the more maroon part of the flower. Another interesting moth is this one right here. It doesn't have a common name. The scientific name is Chlorocea rositacta. Let's see, what's another interesting one we can talk about here? I don't know anything particularly unusual about the behavior. I just think it's a very pretty moth. This one here is a painted tiger moth. And like a lot of moths, it has bright colors underneath and then more of camouflage colors outside. And one of the tricks that moths use, they use a bunch of different tricks. One is obviously camouflage, but another trick is surprise. And so what they'll do is the forewings, the big cover wings, they will blend in with the environment. But underneath, the secondary wings, which are these things here, which are red, and the abdomen, which is also red, if a bird is approaching, they'll flare that out. and it'll surprise the bird. And for a brief second, the bird will think, what's going on? And then the moth closes it and drops, just lets go and falls. Now the bird thinks, oh, there's a red thing around here. Where's that red thing? And the bird's looking for it and can't find it because the moth has closed the forewings back over. Let's see. There's a whole bunch of these other moths that are really interesting. They're called micro moths. And so moths are kind of divided into two categories, just the regular moths or the macro moths and the micro moths. And the micro moths are very, very small. They're about this big. You would probably just overlook them if they were sitting on your under your porch light or something like that. But if you have a little loop or a macro lens or something, that is where a lot of the diversity shows up. This one here is called a spangled Pellocrista, and some of the coloring is actually even metallic looking. And you'll notice on most of my moth pictures that I'm showing you, they're all sitting on cloth. That's a sheet, and that sheet serves a couple of purposes. One is the moths love to land on it. It's 100% cotton. It's white, so it produces a nice neutral background. But also, if you're trying to find out how big the moth is, you can count the threads and use it like a ruler. And then when you're looking up the moths in the guidebook and it says, oh, this moth is this big and a very similar looking moth is bigger, you can use that to figure it out. So here's another moth that's kind of interesting. This one looks like bark on a cottonwood tree, and that's in fact where we found it. It was fairly close to some cottonwood trees. I was set up down by the creek, and that's where this one showed up. This is called an IO moth, and it's actually indoors. We found this on the side of the house back in the spring, and we were supposed to get a very hard freeze that night. And so we gently brought it inside and put it in our plant room for the night, and then in the morning we let it go. But before we let it go, I, of course, took some pictures of it. You can see that the way its defense mechanism is when these forewings are closed, this moth is going to be fairly well camouflaged, but when it feels threatened, and as I was sitting there setting up the camera, it probably felt threatened by me, it slowly opened these wings back up and revealing something that looks like a couple of eyes staring at you. The silkworm moths, which this is a member of, don't eat or drink after they emerge. They have no functional mouth parts or digestive system, so all of the energy that's inside them came from when they were a caterpillar. And they only live for a couple of weeks. So they emerge, and in those couple of weeks, they have to find a mate and lay eggs. Let's see. I don't know, we could just go on and on. There's so many cool moths here. Let's see if there's any more that have interesting things I know about them. Oh, yes. Okay. Let's see, where there's a best example of that. I'll bring this one up. Okay. There's another category of moth that's called bird-dropping moths. And these are a set of moths that have evolved to look like bird droppings. And there's a whole bunch of different ones. There's dozens of them. And each one looks like a different kind of bird dropping. So I'll show you one of those right here. This is called a snakeweed flower moth. So a lot of moths are named after the plant or the flower or tree that their caterpillars live on. But again, if you're looking down on this moth, this white and this dark look kind of like a bird dropping. Then some moths are just cool. I don't have an interesting story about them, but they are just really cool to look at. So this one here, it's called the lettered Hebracine moth. And it just has just this beautiful pattern. And I don't know what it's designed to camouflage with, but it's got stuff down here.
So Andy, how do you identify all of these moths? What resources do you use?
So there's a lot. One of my neighbors who does some mothing recommended a couple of books to me. They both have the same name, Moths of Western North America. This one's by Seabrook Leckie, and then this one's by Jerry Powell and Paul Oppler, also called Moths of Western North America. I use those. Those are really good for browsing. And one of the things I really like about this book is it has maps of where they are. So if you think you found a moth and it's only found in southern Arizona, that's probably not your moth. The other thing that's good about this book is that it tells you how to distinguish it from other similar looking moths, and has little markers over on the picture, and that I found that to be very helpful. It also tells you what kind of plants that moths live on. And then online, there's a couple of really good resources. One of them is this site that's put out by Mississippi State University. It's called the Moth Photographers Group. And the pictures on there, this is well curated, so you don't get a lot of false names of moths and stuff like that. Like if you do a Google search, of course, you'll just get all kinds of names that are all mixed up and wrong. And this is heavily curated, and they have a lot of pictures of just about every species, well, of moth there is. One of the problems is there are tens of thousands of moths, and a book like this can only, you can see it's pretty thick, can only cover about 25% of the moths in Western North America. So it's just not practical. So what these guides have done is the more common ones, and then also the more interesting ones. A site like this has everything. So if you think you found something rare or something that they just didn't have room for in the book, that's a good way. One of the resources that I use the most is iNaturalist. So iNaturalist is a place you can upload your pictures, and other people, including people doing scientific research, can come in and look at your pictures and figure out what's where. One of the nice things about iNaturalist is you give it a picture and you say, hey, I want to identify this, and it will give you a bunch of the likely subjects, and they are specific to what you're looking for. It's not just moths. iNaturalist is birds and caterpillars and spiders and just anything really, plants. But it will tell you what an ordered list of what's likely. You can use it to find experts on that particular moth, and you can communicate with them if you need help identifying the moth. This also has a map of where the iNaturalist can show you where everybody has reported that moth before. So you can say, wow, there's other people around me have reported it, so maybe that is what I'm seeing. And then the other resource that I use is called bugguide.net. And this one's similar to the first site I showed you, the Moth Photographers Group, but has a little bit different bent on it. The pictures aren't quite as good, but it has a good taxonomic index, and I found that good as well. So those are the main resources I use.
Well, Andy, that was really great. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and information with us. If other people are interested in seeing some of your photos and stuff, are you willing to share them? And if so, tell us where they might find that.
Absolutely. That's the most fun part of all. So yes, I love sharing my pictures. I have them on a website that's on smugmug.com. So it's acgoris.smugmug.com/redstone moths. And I've got it set up such that you can download the pictures if you want. You can download the full resolution. There's a lot of detail in there, so it's best to look at them on a large screen. And I let people do whatever they want with my pictures. So if you're interested in using them for some purpose, you can do whatever you want with them. Let's see. I also am really happy to share if anybody is interested in doing their own photography and they want to learn or try it, give me a call or email me. I'm happy to help and share. I just think that it's such an exciting thing. You can tell I'm excited, right? And I just love sharing that aspect of nature and hope that other people get to get even a fraction of the excitement out of it that I do.
Very good. Thank you.